Hello, and welcome to Slate Money, your guide to the business and finance news of the week. I'm Felix Salmon of Axios with Elizabeth Spiers of New York Times and places like that.
Hello.
I'm here with my colleague Emily Peck of Axios.
Hey, Felix.
We have a tech-heavy episode today, and it is a particularly wonderful and brilliant tech-heavy episode because we have the smartest person in tech on the show. Shira Ovide, welcome back.
Thank you. Smartest? Really?
Smartest, 100%.
I'll take the compliment.
Shira, who are you? Introduce yourself.
I am Shira Ovide. I write the Tech Friend newsletter at The Washington Post. Google it, sign up, it's free.
And you are going to help walk us through the fustercluck that is internet service in the United States and why it's so terrible. We are going to talk about YouTube and how mind-bogglingly enormous it is. We have a segment on the AI hype machine and how it's gone out of control. We have a whole Slate Plus segment on where the AIs are getting their data to train themselves on. It's all coming up on Slate Money. Slate Money is sponsored this week by Progressive Insurance. If you are a podcast listener, and I know you are, you might like true crime, or you might like comedy, or you might like celebrity interviews, or you might even like wonkish podcasts about business and finance. What is certain is that you are the one calling the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Okay, sure. I am so happy that you are on the show this week because you can explain to me. I have asked this question on the show many, many times, and I've never received a decent answer. Why is internet in America so fucking expensive?
Look, it's a great question. And I have often referred to internet service as the worst essential consumer product in the United States because there's no information about what is a good or fair price to pay, right? You can find out today what's a fair price to pay if you want to fly to Los Angeles in May. But you really have no idea what's a good or fair price to pay for internet service. The government collects almost no information about the speeds that people typically get, right? That might be very different than the advertised speeds that the companies promise. We don't really have a good handle, although that's improving, on how many people can't afford internet service or lines simply don't reach them. So it's totally maddening. And depending on who you ask, the problem is there's no competition or little competition. That these are kind of local monopolies or duopolies. To other people, the problem is ineffective regulation, that internet services may be a natural monopoly product like electricity or something like that, and it should be regulated like that. And generally, regulation of internet service in the United States has been poor to non-existent. And, I think there's some people who think we should mirror the approach taken in other countries, which is internet lines are kind of publicly owned infrastructure. And maybe you get private companies that offer service, build service on top of shared publicly owned internet lines. So for whatever reason, we kind of have the worst of all worlds. We have a, basically private market driven internet service in the United States that is kind of a failure of free markets, but it's also heavily subsidized by the government. And it's also a failure of sort of government oversight and investment.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me that like we can have heavy subsidies and high prices. Like that's like, when do you ever get that
very
This is
combination?
American.
healthcare too. This is a lot of things that we.
Yes, exactly. Health insurance is
The model that I always thought made sense in the United States is the one that you find quite a lot in Europe, which is where you do get private companies building out those lines to individual houses and owning those lines. But then they have something called local loop unbundling, which means that absolutely anyone can offer internet service over those lines. And we're kind of seeing that now in mobile telephony. Like lots of different brands are offering service over any given network. Right now, we, I guess, care more about making mobile plans accessible than we do internet plans. And maybe that's just the way things are going. Like, kind of internet isn't necessary anymore if you have a phone. So why do we even care?
But we're here today to talk about these new ISP nutrition labels. That's the big news, right? I mean, that would signify that there is some caring going on this week after some like really long battle with the FCC and the ISPs. Internet service providers now have to actually tell you how fast the internet service is going to be, how much it costs, what the extra fees are, all that kind of stuff. And the very cute little nutrition labels, they look like the food ones, and they say broadband facts at the top and all of this. Like, does that signify, Shira, that something's changing?
Yeah, for sure. Something is changing. And, just to Felix's earlier point, there are many countries, China and India among them, the biggest countries in the world by population, where home internet service is not a priority, where the internet basically means the internet you access on your phone. And I don't think we're there in the United States. That I think we do still have this legacy of home internet and computers being essential services, but we'll see if that changes. And yeah, to Emily's point about these broadband air quotes nutrition labels, it took, depending on when you start the clock, maybe 15 years to get this done. And again, it seems like a no-brainer that it basically is a standardized list of information of the kinds of things Emily talked about, right? The monthly cost of service, if you're on a promotional plan, okay, what's the real number that you'll be paying in a year or 2 years? All kinds of fees that are sometimes hidden, right, for renting a modem from your cable company or things like that. And it was remarkable. I talked to a bunch of people this week about the broadband nutrition labels, and people who normally disagree about everything involved in internet service, so representatives of giant companies and small internet providers and consumer advocates, they all agreed that these nutrition labels are not perfect, but useful for consumers and really a win for transparency in an industry where transparency has been wildly lacking.
But presumably the giant companies are the reason why it took so long, because they didn't want this, right?
Yes, I think large internet providers in the United States fight literally any single change that is proposed to improve internet service because they're happy with the status quo.
And how much of this is really driven by consumer rage that what you pay for may not be what you get? I can't think of another product where you pay as much money as you do for internet service, and whether you actually get the product is up in the air.
It is maddening. And you can see that reflected in the consumer satisfaction scores for internet and phone service, that people are generally furious for all the reasons that Elizabeth just said, and many more, right? That, wait, I thought I signed up to pay $60 a month, and actually my bill is $100 a month, or they jacked up my bill by 40%, and there's nothing I can do because I don't really have a realistic alternative provider at my address.
And there's no better service for that either.
There's no better service for that. If you call, I think I would rather go to the gynecologist than call my internet provider, right? So it's just a terrible customer service experience. The product can be unreliable. My internet service at home is generally good, but I remember very distinctly when I was applying for the job that I currently have at the Washington Post, there was one weekend when I, had a deadline to meet to apply for this job. And one Saturday, the internet just crapped out at my house, right? And there was nothing I could do about it. I had to go find free Wi-Fi somewhere else. But, that was extremely anxiety producing and inconvenient for me. And there's really no recourse, right? That if you're a business customer and you lose internet service, you get payments for that. You have guarantees of minimum service, and home internet customers don't get those guarantees.
So who is the regulator? Who is the government agency in charge of making sure that we don't all get ripped off and pay a fortune for crappy service?
It's an interesting question because on paper, the Federal Communications Commission regulates internet service. But if you ask some particularly Republican members of Congress, the FCC does not have oversight to regulate internet service in the United States. And if it's not them, it's no one.
Oh, no.
So, the FCC is really a disempowered regulator, and it acts that way historically.
And that's one of the reasons it took 15 years for them to come up with a nutrition label.
For sure.
But Shira, I had a good experience, I thought, with Verizon Fios. So I'll just tell you what happened.
Is this story time with Emily Peck?
Yeah. Everyone gather around and I'll tell you the story of our shaky streaming. We've been watching, TV through YouTube TV. That's a teaser for our next segment. And it's been shaky. And I think even when we're watching like football games or Super Bowl, like it would just freeze up. It was really annoying. And, we were just kind of like putting up with it. We thought maybe our neighbors were also using Verizon Fios and like, I guess that's just how it is now. I don't know. And then one afternoon I said, you know what if we just call and ask Verizon Fios? So we called, we found the number, not easy. We got through all the hoops. Like you have to remember a PIN number. Why? I do not know. They know who you are, Why do you have to have a PIN number? Anyway, got through all of it. Didn't talk to a human being. Finally got on the line with a robot who was like, what is the issue? And I was like, our internet doesn't work well. And they were like, we will check your internet, the robot said. And the robot was like, hang on. And it was like, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. And
I love that they make little beep, boop, beep, boop sounds. And they're like, this is the sound of a robot thinking. Beep, boop, beep, boop.
I might be adding the beep boops.
No,
myself.
They do. The beep, boop, beep, boops, they really do that.
How would you know it's working if you don't hear beeps?
Yeah.
No, I mean, then you're like, oh, the robot is checking things.
Yeah.
And then the robot came back and was like, we have found an issue. Hold, please, while we fix it. And I was like, oh my God, they're just going to fix it? Like, what is this magic? And again, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. We think we fixed it. And we were like, okay. And then I hung up. And since then, our internet has been a lot better. So I thought this is a positive story. But then I'm hearing feedback that if they could have fixed it all along, why didn't they? Why did I have to call, jump through 80 hoops, talk to a robot, et cetera, et cetera? So is it a good story or a bad story?
It sounds like the hallmarks of an abusive relationship. If you're if somebody's been an asshole to you for a really long time and then they start being slightly less of an asshole, you're like, oh, that's nice.
They're so nice. I just had to ask.
So Shira, can you just explain, like on a conceptual level, what would be the incentive for Verizon to wait for someone to complain before fixing their service rather than just fixing all of the service that is broken?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't want to put myself in the position of Fios, but I think, the people who want there to be more competitive options for internet service would say, look, if you have relatively little competition in providing internet service, you don't have to make a good product or offer good customer service, right? There's no incentive for you. There's no upside to you to make service available to Emily Peck's home on a regular basis. Why not wait for them to call instead of you proactively fixing whatever the heck went wrong?
I do think that the first set of beep beep was a real thing. When Emily said, like, I think my service is bad, and they were like, let's check that, and it took them, I don't know, 15 seconds or something to check it. I think that was a genuine test that was targeted straight at Emily's house.
Yeah.
And it took 15 seconds and they were like, yes, it's broken. And doing that test for every single house, every single day, just to make sure that every single house is working okay, I can see how that could add up and could be expensive, and they wouldn't want to do that on a continual basis.
Yeah, and obviously we don't know what the problem was, right? Were they restarting Emily's router or something like that? Was the problem on at Verizon's infrastructure, right? So that is something that Verizon could and probably should have been proactively monitoring their own equipment. So we just don't know what the problem was in this particular case.
And the weird thing was the robot just didn't tell us.
Yeah, I don't think the robot told me.
The robot's just not forthcoming on such things.
It wasn't like we're sending you our analysis and no, there's no autopsy or anything like that.
While we are on this subject, Shira, can you also explain this whole question of what's going on with subsidies? You did mention that the government does spend quite a lot of money subsidizing internet service. And there's one in particular that isn't being renewed or might not be renewed.
Yeah, there's a program that was passed by Congress during the pandemic to basically provide consumers some relief when all of us were, or many of us were, stuck at home and needing to access many things over the internet. It's called ACP. That's the shorthand. And like many COVID era, pandemic era government spending programs, there's sort of uncertainty now about whether it should or might be renewed with additional funds. And the way it's generally worked is households who are eligible, lower income households who meet eligibility requirements, they're getting like a $30 a month or so credit on their bill, and there's supposed to be these kind of lower price plans that people can use this money for. And the money is basically running out, and the Biden White House has basically blamed Republicans in Congress for not renewing this money. And we'll see what happens. I just have no sense of, particularly in this Congress, they have a lot of priorities and not much time left during the session to do all the things they want to do. And I don't know if ACP is on their to-do list.
If I have any hope that things might get better, I would say that it is in wireless internet services. That companies like T-Mobile are pushing quite aggressively. Just put a wireless hotspot in your house and get broadband that way. Does that have the potential to provide the level of competition necessary to bring prices down more broadly?
Maybe. I agree with you that you can see in the numbers that service that's called in the industry fixed wireless, which, as Felix said, it's basically home internet service that's delivered over 5G mobile internet lines. It's growing part of the internet service market. It's stealing market share from traditional cable internet offerings. It's been very disruptive. And for some people, depending on where you live and, like which direction your walls face and things like that, that can be a really good option for lots of people. But, there's just problems of physics. And the same is true of Starlink, the Elon Musk company that, again, beams internet service through satellites, that it can be a great option for people who, in many cases, live in rural parts of the country and don't have good alternative options, existing options for internet service. So I don't want to discount how important fixed wireless and Starlink are to America's future internet. But it's not nothing is a fix for all problems. That there's problems of physics. You're beaming internet from space, right? There's some problems with that. Anything that involves mobile internet lines, you can see this in your cell phone. It flakes out sometimes, right? Again, if you don't face the right way, if you live in an area with like lots of trees or buildings, it might not work right. So it's not a solution for everybody, but it is definitely good that because of these technological changes, we do have more options than we did even a few years ago.
I mean, you mentioned like rural internet, and we definitely saw this in the pandemic when suddenly everyone needed internet at home, and they were like, I live in rural Maine and my internet has always been shit, but now I really need it. And the local internet companies would say, your internet is fine. And they're like, come here and you can see that my internet is not fine. And it strikes me that one of the reasons why American internet is so much worse and so much more expensive than, say, Korean internet is just a sheer density question. Like, Korea is just a much denser country. You don't need to run nearly as many miles of internet cable as you do in America. Everyone in America is so spread out that there's just a lot more infrastructure necessary to reach everyone.
For sure. The United States, you're right, is a spread out country, and that does make it more difficult both to build internet lines and to make money from internet lines, right? If you're in an area where you might only have, 1,000 households in 10 miles, that's less revenue for the internet company or companies that are offering you service and have to spend to build out those lines. So that's definitely an issue. The way that we've addressed that or tried to address that in the United States is by subsidizing building of access lines, right? So again, America does have these challenges of being spread out, but the way we try to address that is through taxpayer spending. It's just that that money has not been spent very effectively historically. And we're trying it again. The Biden administration pushed and Congress passed an infrastructure spending bill a few years ago that's delivering tens of millions of dollars through the states to, again, build out internet lines where it currently doesn't exist and hopefully make service affordable. So we're just going to keep trying, and hopefully one or more of these solutions will improve things. And I will say things are getting better than they were at the beginning of the pandemic for all kinds of reasons.
What about the dumb fees that these internet companies lard on? Internet infrastructure fee, network enhancement fee. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a way to jack up the price. Isn't the Biden administration going after fees like that? Has it done anything in this arena?
Yeah, you're right. This is all part of the junk fees push that the Biden administration is working on. And I think the broadband nutrition labels that are starting to roll out this week, that's part of it. They're supposed to say very clearly, we'll charge you $10 a month or whatever, $5 a month to rent a modem. If you go over this self-imposed, totally unnecessary cap of data usage every month, we'll charge you an extra $10. Consumer Reports has found things like internet companies labeling their own self-imposed junk fees as that look like government taxes, and they're not taxes. It's just a fee they've chosen to charge you. So, part of the idea of this nutrition label, this broadband label, is to force the companies to stop masking fees as something other than what they are.
But even if they do that, 83 million Americans have only one choice for broadband. I mean, what real recourse does a consumer who absolutely needs it for work or whatever really have?
Yeah, I think that is one of the fundamental challenges in a lot of people's minds, that the real problem here is that if you hate your internet provider, if they treat you like crap, if they jack up your bill by 50%, a lot of people don't have a choice. They don't have a realistic alternative provider. And so what incentive is there for your internet provider to treat you well and to charge you a fair price if you're a captive customer?
We should just all go off the grid.
For some netheads and geeks, and that's what they call themselves, the crash of America online left them feeling lost in cyberspace.
So before we get to the break, I want to tell you about our Slate Plus segment this week because it's really good and we really dig into AI. We're talking about this great New York Times piece that came out about a week ago about how tech giants are harvesting immense amounts of data for AI, particularly from YouTube. And we kind of get into like, is this okay? Is this not okay? Is it a copyright violation? What does it all mean? Felix mentioned something about the Habsburgs. So, Slate Plus members get to hear that after the regular show. And if you're not a Slate Plus member, you should probably sign up so you could hear it and other great bonus Slate Plus segments like it. You also don't hear any ads on all the Slate Plus podcasts. You get unlimited access to slate.com content, and there's a newsletter. So sign up at slate.com/plus. That's slate.com/plus. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you cannot find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. All of this is why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/slate. That's linkedin.com/slate to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Your pet is one of a kind, and so is their journey. While every playful moment is a memory in the making, sometimes cats and dogs are a little too good at getting into trouble. That's why you should check out ASPCA Pet Health Insurance. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program offers customizable accident and illness plans, making it easier for pet parents like you to help your pet get the care they may need. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program has been around for over 18 years, and they've helped more than 600,000 pets during that time. They allow you to customize your plan, helping ensure your pet's plan is as unique as they are. Because vet bills can really add up, especially when you're least expecting it. It's simple. Use their app to submit a claim, and you'll receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/slatemoney. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/slatemoney. Again, that's aspcapetinsurance.com/slatemoney. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
Talking of the way that broadband has transformed the media universe, Emily, you are a paying subscriber to YouTube TV. This is a significant chunk of change that you pay over and above the amount that you pay for your internet.
Yes, we subscribe to YouTube TV. I don't know how much it costs because I don't do that bill, but it was this year that they started showing NFL games, and it was a huge thing. I mean, YouTube TV really took off this year. A lot of people I know started paying for it because you can watch multiple games at one time on your screen. Very cool. You didn't used to be able to do that.
Picture-in-picture technology. I remember that.
And it's, it's good. It's basically just like TV, and you could record stuff. And there were no issues until, I already mentioned my streaming problems, but YouTube TV is great. And Shira has a great piece out this week that made me think about the fact that YouTube is a media company. It's not a tech company. It's a big media company. And it's eating the lunch of all the other media companies that we're constantly talking about, yet we never talk about it.
The big insight, the thing that struck me really was that if you compare the size of YouTube to the size of Netflix, which everyone thinks of as the big streaming behemoth, like Netflix is maybe half the size of YouTube. Who just came out and said YouTube, we had this a couple of weeks ago, that YouTube as a standalone offering would probably be worth $400 billion. That's like way more than Netflix.
Yeah, I think Michael Nathanson at Bernstein Research and at least one other analyst had some numbers like that, right? It's a hugely valuable company inside of Google.
It strikes me as also one of the great M&A deals of all time. Google bought YouTube for, what was it, like just over $1 billion? They had this terrible offering called Google Video, which they were trying to make happen. And like most Google built social networks, it was terrible and no one used it. And then they're like, okay, we'll buy YouTube. Then they really incorporated YouTube deeply into the ecosystem. It learned a lot about users, and the personalization algorithm became very sophisticated. And they did a huge amount of things that a standalone YouTube could never have done. So Google added a massive amount of value to YouTube in much the same way that Disney did a bunch of things with Star Wars that like Lucasfilm might not have been able to do on their own. And so it's the perfect M&A deal. It's the perfect acquisition where you have like a really great core business, which you can then add to by being bigger and more powerful.
I thought you were going to say Facebook buying Instagram, because that's
and Facebook buying Instagram as well. Yeah, Instagram would not be the power that it is today if it wasn't owned by Facebook.
In both of these cases, these were very early transactions, especially in the realm of video and things like that. Shira, do you think that part of the reason why it's not as apparent to people that YouTube is the behemoth that it is just because it's been around for so long? And it's easy to look at things like TikTok and imagine them as being much bigger because of the novelty and the extent to which you see young people using it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, maybe it's just that YouTube, it has been around forever and we treat it like furniture or like infrastructure, right? It's just the thing that's there anytime you need to, look up how to change a flat tire, or you're looking for new music, or
restart your cable modem.
Restart your cable modem. YouTube is just there, right? And maybe that it kind of blends into the background. But just to Elizabeth's point about the popularity of YouTube, if you look at Pew Research surveys of Americans, YouTube is by by far, by a country mile, the most widely used social app among both adults and teens in the United States. Like all the talk about teens on TikTok, if you look at the numbers, by tens of percentage points, YouTube is more widely used than TikTok among teens.
Is it a social app?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, right? And I think YouTube always says we're not a social network, but it kind of gets lumped in with sort of Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and the like.
Well, they now have this very TikTok-ish product called YouTube Shorts, which really is indistinguishable from TikTok.
Yes, and they've pushed Shorts very hard. It's like impossible not to open the YouTube app and not see Shorts.
So if TikTok is a social app, then YouTube is a social app at this point.
Well, I think at this point, it's also, and per what Felix was saying about the integration into the Google ecosystem, it's the second most popular search engine. And that's responsible for the way a lot of people just fundamentally understand reality is, Googling or looking for things on YouTube.
And of course, it has a built-in uncompetable advantage when it comes to SEO. Like you search for anything, YouTube results are going to be right at the top of the page. I wonder why Google would do that.
But I think of it as just a pure media company. It streams videos, streams music. It's a media powerhouse and worth more than Netflix. I think Peter Kafka had, it's worth, if you take Netflix, add in Paramount, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Fox, you would have a company with a market cap of around $300 billion. That's still less than YouTube.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it's YouTube on TVs is the most popular streaming destination in Americans' living rooms. YouTube is by far the most popular way people listen to music globally, right? Not Spotify, not the radio. It's YouTube. That's how we both discover new music and listen to existing music. So, and it's a way that lots and lots of people earn real income, right? That all the influencers or creators or whatever you want to call them, they're basically mini media empires, and a lot of them are on YouTube because YouTube is unique among internet companies in sharing their advertising and subscription revenue with the people who make the content.
It is also like the one thing we don't like to admit here in Podcastville is that it is by far the most popular way by which people listen to podcasts. More popular than Apple Podcasts, more popular than Spotify. People listen to podcasts, including Slate Money, on YouTube. And we know, like, whenever, we run ads for podcasts, we're like, wherever you get your podcast, yeah, that means YouTube more than any other place. If you look at all of the podcasts that have really taken off in the past few years, or maybe not all of them, but the vast majority of them, they over-index massively to YouTube. Like, they're very visual podcasts. They spend a lot of time caring about their thumbnails and how they look, and there's a lot of visual production design. And that's been driven by the fact that, yeah, YouTube is a podcast platform, is the podcast platform.
I have a theory about that says people are more engaged parasocially if they can see you and hear you.
But I can't just sit still and listen to a podcast. Like, I would go crazy. I don't really get it at all. Like,
I think people have it on in the background, like they put it up on YouTube on their TV screen while they're working.
Listen to your podcast on your TV. You don't do that, Peck?
It's hard enough getting it to work, so no.
And one of the reasons it's kind of flown beneath the radar is because Google has historically just refused to break out numbers for it. And so no one really knows how big it is. But I think one of the big surprises to me is the degree to which it's been successful at persuading people to pay cash money for YouTube. First of all, like, there was the sort of pay us a few bucks and we'll stop showing you ads, which I can kind of see that as a value proposition. But then they moved aggressively into a much higher priced product that Emily has, which is, pay us like $75 or $100 a month and we'll replace your TV. And it's like, I'm paying that much?
Yeah, and again, Peter Kafka wrote about this, right? If you look at the numbers, YouTube TV is the maybe third or fourth most popular cable television service in the United States now, right? So it's big.
I mean, it's way better than when I had cable. I remember having cable and it was terrible. And this would seem pretty seamless and easy. No one had to come to my house to set it up, which is huge advance.
And can you use your remote control to change the channel?
No, I have to. Of course. Well, how else would you change the channel?
I don't know how these things work. Because for me,
remote
it's just
control.
like it's a stream from the internet. How do you change the channel with the remote control?
It's an app, you know. You go in and you see the channels and what's on.
Amazing. The wonders of modern technology. Like Felix, at some point, Felix is going to learn what a television is, and my mind is going to get blown.
Do you not own a television set, Felix?
I do own a television set, but I haven't subscribed to linear TV in 20 years.
So you're a cord cutter. You've cut the cord.
I cut the cord back in the 1990s sometime.
How do you watch football, Felix? I'm just kidding. We all know he doesn't watch football.
I saw Color TV, RCA Victor Color TV. I know what I've been missing now. Wow! I saw Color TV. Gosh!
Apple Card is the perfect cashback rewards credit card. You earn up to 3% daily cash on every purchase every day. That's 3% on your favorite products at Apple, 2% on all other Apple Card with Apple Pay purchases, and 1% on anything you buy with your titanium Apple Card or virtual card number. Visit apple.co/card calculator to see how much you can earn. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Subject to credit approval. Terms apply.
This episode of Slate Money is brought to you by Wondery. They're a podcast company, and if you want to hear about the $100 wedding dress that saved Abercrombie, or which real tech acquisition is like Game of Thrones, or the one financial equation that can finally solve climate change, then you should check out the daily news podcast, The Best One Yet. Every morning on The Best One Yet, hosts Nick and Jack serve up 3 of the most interesting business news stories and why you need to know them in just 20 minutes. Be in the know this year by starting your morning with The Best One Yet every weekday. Follow The Best One Yet on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free right now on Wondery Plus, and for more deep dive and daily business content, listen on Wondery, the destination for business podcasts, with shows like The Best One Yet, How I Built This, Business Wars, and many more. Wondery means business. Slate Money is sponsored this week by Hims. Who cares about the things you check before you go out? Do you have your phone? Do you have your wallet? Do you have your keys? How does your hair look? If your hair is thinning, you may not be so confident leaving the house. That's why you need to check out Hims. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing simple and convenient access to science-based treatments for erectile dysfunction, hair loss, weight loss, and more. The whole process is 100% online, so you can get a new routine of improving your overall health faster. They have a range of options, including pills or chews. They have serums, sprays, oral options for hair loss. If it's prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free in discreet packaging. There's no waiting rooms, no pharmacy visits, no insurance is needed. Just pay one low price for your treatments, for your online visits, for your ongoing shipments, and even provider messaging. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/money. That's HIMS.com/money for your personalized treatment options. hims.com/money. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See hims.com/money for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Shira, how much am I going to pay for my next toothbrush?
Yeah, so I wrote recently about a $400 Oral-B electric toothbrush. I'm making air quotes, with AI, with artificial intelligence. And I noticed it because Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce.com, and a man who is basically Mr. Hype, including Mr. Hype for AI, he posted on X about seeing this toothbrush in the wild and basically said, this is sort of peak AI hype, right? So when Mark Benioff thinks this is way too much, that this toothbrush has really gone too far.
What exactly was the AI supposed to do in this toothbrush?
So, look, I tried to talk to Procter & Gamble, which owns the Oral-B brand, about, can you tell me exactly what is in this that is artificial intelligence? Because it seemed to me like it's a sensor, right? It sort of promises that it will it detects how long or how often you brush in what areas of your mouth. And that to me didn't seem like artificial intelligence. It just seemed like we have sensors, right? And it gives you a report based on those sensor readings. I will say I got an email from somebody who said they are involved in Procter & Gamble R&D that said, yes, there's like patents behind this and it really is artificial intelligence. So I do not know. I can just tell you that Procter & Gamble on the record would not say anything specific about the technology behind this toothbrush.
I do love the idea that consumers might be willing to spend $400 on a toothbrush just because it has the word AI on the package. I do think that's clearly false, though. For all of the AI hype out there, I haven't seen a lot of evidence that consumers are willing to pay for it. Like the amount of people paying for ChatGPT is like just a very small number of early adopter nerd types. There's been reporting this week that Apple is going to be building these M4 AI chips into all of its new MacBook Pros that are coming out at the end of the year. And everyone was like, oh, are people going to get excited about that and buy this new computer because it has an AI chip in it? And everyone's kind of looking at each other going, yeah, no, like,
Don't you think-
why would they? What, is there anything yet which is a consumer-facing application of AI that people have been shown to be willing to pay for?
I think, like many technological changes or phases, the real money is probably going to be made in selling this stuff to businesses and not to consumers. So we'll see what happens. I was at a dinner this week with some tech executives, and one of them said, the real place where people are paying for AI and it's having an impact is in customer service functions, right? Because you can imagine if you're a company, if you're Fios, you spend a lot of money on this cost center of customer service. It's not bringing you revenue in many cases. If you can automate that with hopefully good AI, that's a significant cost savings, and that's worth spending money on. But the same executive also said all the tech companies and other kinds of companies, they're spending tons and tons. I mean, I can't even tell you, billions, maybe trillions of dollars investing in building their AI capabilities. He said, in terms of ROI, there's a lot of I and not a lot of R right now, meaning that, the return on investment is minimal to none.
Don't you think part of that is just the sort of market demand for investors? It puts pressure on consumer-facing companies to add AI to anything. It almost seems very similar to the Internet of Things peak hype, where anything that you could possibly own needed to be connected to the internet.
It's exactly the same as every hype cycle. Yes, exactly that. It's just we will seem cool and forward thinking if we are into AI. And so what you get is just, I literally keep a list of what I refer to as AI Juicero, named after the ridiculous, now dead Silicon Valley over-engineered juicer. That's basically ridiculous uses of AI that cost a lot of money and seems to have almost no value for consumers or businesses, right? And on that list are things like, Google made a big deal about a Hellmann's mayonnaise app that I think gives you mayonnaise recipes. I don't remember. Who knows? But I was like, why do you need AI for that? Literally the best thing. The internet has basically solved recipes. They've made all of the recipes you could ever want. And why is AI needed for this? A bunch of fast food restaurants are now talking about AI. So I saw an executive of Yum Brands, or one of the other fast food chains, talking recently about all the ways they're adding AI to their restaurants, including things like somebody in a fast food restaurant could ask a chatbot, what's the appropriate oven temperature for to cook this particular food? And I thought, why? You know what I mean? Like, somebody could tell you the right temperature. You could write it down in a manual or a digital manual that you can search.
You could look it up on YouTube.
You could look it up on YouTube. There's just so many so many use cases that I've seen for AI that just sort of seem like answers in search of a problem, like overly engineered, overly expensive answers in search of a problem.
Okay, the one use of AI that I have genuinely been excited about, which I've seen in the past couple of weeks, is that Zillow will take a look at all of the photographs of a house and ingest them into an AI and generate a floor plan. And so, like, floor plans have always been a weakness outside New York City. If you want a floor plan of a house, no one really has one to hand. Building one is extremely expensive, measuring everything and getting someone to draw it. But now it seems that they can generate one straight just by looking at all the photos and sort of working it out from that. I think that's awesome. But like, yeah, there are few of those, but they are good. The one place I have seen real revenue from AI, the one headline I saw, is that apparently Accenture, the consulting company, has had $1 billion of AI revenue in 6 months.
And is that from their clients basically saying, we need an AI strategy. Here's all this money to help us come up with a strategy?
Exactly. Yeah.
Genius.
I see all this useless. People are trying to just throw AI into anything and it's useless. I think this is just kind of what happens when you have a new technology. It takes time to evolve it to find the consumer product that is going to be the revolution. Like, it took time to get to the iPhone and get to apps. And you know, at first the internet was cool, but it's like, who cares? And you went to like Ask Jeeves, but then Google happened and you were like, oh, I get it now. I get it more. And like, it takes time for people to play around with this tech and to figure out the consumer uses, because the people who invent the tech aren't thinking like that. It's like, it just takes a lot of time. And so you're going to have like dumb stuff like AI toothbrushes or the Internet of Things. And like,
yeah, the stupid will get weeded out. But I will say that, you know, I've been through multiple cycles of new technology, and the stupid phase is pretty stupid this time around.
But yeah. I'm fascinated, Emily, that you remembered Ask Jeeves, because that was really the whole point of it was put a question in a box and we will give you the answer.
In natural language, right?
That's what we've always wanted.
It only took 25 years before we actually worked out how to do that.
Yes. And eventually probably like Google probably goes away the way we're used to it, with returning you all the links, and it's a mess, and we've talked about this. And then eventually we do have AI revolutionizing the way we use the internet and all of that stuff. But in the meantime, it's just a lot of dumb stuff.
It already is in many ways, but you know, AI is not new. And I think part of the reason why there's so much dumb hype around it is that most people can't distinguish between different types of AI. And there's an assumption that whatever AI is in your toothbrush is something approaching general AI, where you really have a borderline sentient robot telling you how to brush your teeth. And, you know, most of our technology that already has AI and has for years has a kind of different type of AI that really is more about optimizing algorithms. So, you know, machine learning, natural language processing, none of those things are new. But the issue is, I think with ChatGPT, people suddenly have a consumer-facing example of a bot that conforms to everything that they've ever seen in a sci-fi movie. And I think that's part of why, you know, the hype cycle is what it is.
If you think about the voice hype cycle, which was never particularly hyped, but when everyone started
it was very
talking
hyped
to Alexa. But when people started talking to Alexa and Siri and that kind of thing, that is all AI. That is all generated by machine learning algorithms. And, you know, we are now using those. We're not using them as much as we had been hyped to believe that we would be using them, but it seems to be finding its niche in the sort of techno universe. But I do want to talk about basically the current poster child for AI, the large language models, and where they're finding their data and whether any of that was legal. So that I think we are going to talk about in Slate Plus. But before we get to that, we should have a numbers round. And Elizabeth, I believe you have a number.
I do. My number is 500,000, and that's euros. And that's how much you can pay for a golden visa in Portugal. So now it's a thing that people are building what they call passport portfolios and getting multiple passports in multiple countries so that they can kind of take advantage of an arbitrage on the exit fees that you have to pay if you're actually going to change your citizenship, And also, there are some people who are just Peter Thiel types who want a New Zealand residency in case the apocalypse happens. But a lot of people seem to be viewing it also as just a new tax strategy and hedging.
To be clear, this does not reduce the tax payable by US citizens. US citizens have to pay tax on their global income no matter what other citizenships they have, no matter where they live.
Yeah, but the exit tax that I'm talking about is when you renounce your citizenship in the US.
Yeah, well, and the exit tax for renouncing your US citizenship, the one that, Eduardo Saverin famously paid, is absolutely enormous and makes no financial sense, basically.
Wait, if you renounce your US citizenship, you have to pay a lot of money?
A huge amount of money. The US government basically says, you're not going to be paying us taxes for the rest of your life, so you have to pay us all of the money that you would pay us in taxes for the rest of your life.
Go off, America. Wow. Also, wait, if it's the apocalypse, do you really need a passport? Like, it's the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like, it's all on the table. It's all off the table. Who cares?
I guess if you assume that the U.S. is the most likely failed state situation, it's more of a localized apocalypse, but I don't know who
How
would
is
have
the
seen
U.S. the most likely failed state?
The crazy people, the preppers.
The Portugal story is interesting, though. Like, there was this big push, I think, starting around 2012 or thereabouts for Portugal. They were like, let's get lots of high-tech people to move to Portugal and invest in the country, and they'll get inward investment and that kind of stuff. And then it became incredibly popular. This was back when you could do it just by buying a house, basically, in Portugal. It became incredibly popular to the point at which it just pushed house prices out of reach for actual Portuguese people. And you've seen this in New Zealand as well. Like, the local population turns against these schemes pretty quickly, and they wind up sort of sunsetting. Emily, what's your number?
My number is $1 million. It is an estimate, to mention Peter Kafka again, that Peter Kafka came up with for the amount of money a man named David Patten has made on the song that goes, let's see who knows it. Oh, oh, oh.
It's magic.
Exactly. But instead of it's magic, it's... So it's a song from the 1960s that David Patten's band did called Magic. He was in a band called Pilot. And then a few years ago, it became the Ozempic jingle.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic. In a study,
and it is an immense earworm. Ever since I learned about this, it's been in my head. And I think part of the reason, most of the reason Ozempic is popular is because you lose a bunch of weight when you take it. So Americans like that. But the song really, really helps. They used it, they licensed it to make the jingle. It became really popular. And then they had this guy go into the studio and actually record it himself. So he's maybe made $1 million just from this all happening to him now, which I guess is a dream for an older musician.
I have this theory that, like, the reason why Americans have incredibly high internet costs is somehow related to, in some obscure way, to the fact that America is also the only country that advertises drugs.
Okay.
Like, I've been in this country for 28 years now at this point, 27 years, and I still can't quite get my brain around people advertise drugs, people advertise hospitals. Like, what? None of this makes sense. People advertise public high schools on the telly. It's a whole thing.
It's a huge business for musicians. Streaming, you don't make as much money these days. It is like the dream. The dream isn't like playing a stadium or having a gold album or whatever.
It's having a drug ad.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant.
An earworm drug ad.
An earworm drug ad. Wow.
common side effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and constipation. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
My number is $380 billion. This is the amount of money the IMF estimates has flown into China since about 2018 or so, just as a result of index changes. So MSCI and FTSE Russell, they started including Chinese shares in their big global indices Bloomberg Barclays, the big global ag bond index, started including Chinese bonds in their big index. There's the Russell World Government Bond Index, which also included China. And because so many people are passive investors and so many people are benchmarking these indices, even if they're active investors, all, trillions and trillions of dollars wound up getting benchmarked to China in one way or another. And so $380 billion actually flowed into China as a result, just of like a bunch of index designing technocrats changing their weights. Shira, what's your number?
My number is 70 billion, and that's the average number of times YouTube Shorts videos are viewed every day, according to Google. 70 billion. It's a number that is so large. I have checked multiple times with Google. Did I mishear this number? How is this number possible? But that's a real number, right? Which shows you, if YouTube has billions of users on a regular basis.
So YouTube Shorts is a global thing. It's not just an American thing. There's no way that you could get that just from America, right?
Yes, great point. And obviously they loop, right? So like TikTok videos. So you might watch one and then it counts as multiple views.
But that is wild. Like 70 billion a day.
So a day on average.
That's 10 videos per human being on the planet per day.
It is an insane number. And look, we don't know what YouTube counts as a view, right? All these internet companies have these fungible metrics, but still, it's a lot of either computers or humans clicking on videos.
How many humans on the planet do you think interact with YouTube Shorts on a daily basis? Like what percentage of the global population? It's got to be
at least 1 billion people. So
if it's a billion people and they're doing 70 billion views a day, then the typical person interacting with YouTube Shorts will be viewing 70 of these per day.
Yeah, that doesn't seem possible, does it?
No, and it's wild. It is wild.
How does that compare to like TikTok, Instagram, or whatever?
Yeah, and again, it's hard to know if these numbers are comparable, right? Because again, these are all fungible metrics. To my knowledge, I don't think either TikTok or Instagram gives a comparable number of how many times their pieces of content or videos are viewed on a daily basis. YouTube started doing that, I assume, because the numbers are bananas large.
To be fair, like 70 billion views per day is pretty much what we get at Axios.com.
It's just my stories alone, usually.
Yeah.
That's how many listeners we have. I mean,
also that.
And that. Okay, we are going to have a Slate Plus on LLMs hoovering up information from YouTube, which they probably weren't allowed to do. That's coming up, but if you're not a Slate Plus member, then thanks for listening so far. Thanks to Jared Downing and Cheyna Roth for producing. Thanks for emailing us on slatemoney@slate.com. And most of all, thanks to Shira Ovide for coming on the show. It's been amazing having you.
Always fun. Thank you.
And in case you haven't had enough tech content from Slate Money this week, I will be back on Tuesday talking to Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz, along with his colleague Chris Dixon, and you get to find out who won the bet about Bitcoin that I entered into 5 years ago with Ben.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.